How's everybody doing? We are back with another edition of Music Talk. My guest today is a scholar of medieval music, Victor Penniman. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. What are we doing up this early, man? It's like noon, right?
Yeah, right.
The crack of noon.
I'm amazed that there are people out.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing? Don't these people have homes?
Us musicians tend to get up at like 10, 11, and I don't know what we're doing right now, but...
That's not because we're lazy, mind you. It's because we stay awake late at night. So,
exactly.
It's the same kind of day, just different times.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Yeah, there you go.
So far on my show, I've gotten 2 bass players and now a viola da gamba player. I thought you guys were all bums. What's up with this? You've been the one eager to do the show so far. But so first of all, your instrument is the viola da gamba. What the heck is a viola da gamba?
Oh, funny you should ask. The viola da gamba is a bowed guitar, basically, a bowed lute, that came into being, we're guessing about the 1490s. Mm-hmm. The generally accepted wisdom on it has been published by Ian Woodfield for a number of years. That appeared in Italy under the influence of Spain at about that time. And of course there's some new ideas going around, some newfangled ideas going around about its origins now, and I haven't really been keeping up on that. I should probably do that at some point. Anyhow, it came about in about the 1490s and became fairly popular in Italy. Moved north of the Alps where it really took root. The Italians kind of stopped using it in the early 17th century, actually. Though they had a pretty active soloing culture, solo instrument culture. What they call the viola bastarda, the bastard viol. There's a slightly small bass viol, so you have a shorter string length, built for shred, pretty much.
And the viols were like the predecessors to the violins.
Not really.
Well, they were earlier before the violin.
No, actually,
okay.
That's a pretty common misconception. They grew up at the same time.
Oh, okay.
The violin family was its own thing, coming pretty much directly from the viol, the medieval fiddle.
Okay.
Which had two ways of constructing it. The ones that I have are the back and the sides and the neck and the peg disc are all one piece of wood.
Okay.
It's carved out. Then you slap a top on the thing, put a bridge on, set it up, and now you got a fiddle. The other way of constructing it was much like the violin is constructed today, which is built up. Right, you've got separate sides, separate back, glued together, and so forth. Yeah. And so you'll find both of those construction types from the Middle Ages, and that's pretty much what led to the violin. And in the 16th century, there's this really kind of an explosion of technology where they just start building all sorts of kinds of crazy stuff. And they built it all in families. So you have soprano, alto, tenor, bass. Pretty much everything. Treble, alto, tenor, bass. And so that's when you start getting, violin, viola, etc. Different sizes than they are now.
Right.
Because there are actually mathematical proportions that are brought into play to determine how big the next voice down is to be. And all of that's been mucked about with.
And the viola da gamba, just to give people an idea of what it is, you sit, right? I mean, it's very similar to a cello, sort of, right?
Sort of, kind of. Yeah, you hold it between your knees. There's no end pin. And there wasn't an end pin for the cello for a long time as well. And just as with the other instruments, there's a treble. Treble's about violin size, really, but it's a bit thicker, and you hold it between your knees like this, and then you hold the bow underhand also,
right?
Because it is a guitar. The things have 6 strings, sometimes 7 when you get to the French Baroque, late 17th century, and they all have frets that are tied on around the neck, which is the way the lute was done. Well, not all frets, all earlier frets. They started inlaying frets, I can't think of the word right now.
Yeah.
But they started making them permanent. I'm not quite sure when they did that, but they were for metal string instruments primarily. They would do that.
Yeah.
And then the tenor size is about yay big, body's about yay, about that fat.
Yeah.
Again, between the knees, held underhand, and this actually comes from plectrum technique. If you're holding something like this, right, and then you turn your hand like that, and then
boom.
yeah. So that's how we do it, and everything's backwards. Our strong stroke is the upstroke as opposed to the downstroke.
Oh,
because, you turn it like this, and you've got downstroke on your guitar, right? Well, so that way.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And then the bass file
that's similar to, this is German, right? And that's French?
No, actually
That's
it's different.
wrong?
Yeah, German is specific to double bass bows.
Right. I mean, I guess it's under. Yeah.
It's kind of
under,
underhand. You're actually, there are two schools of doing it. I think there are two. There may be more. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure people that watch it that know will. It's the nature of the internet. There are some that will press down on the stick using the index finger like this, and then there are some that use the thumb.
Yeah.
I like the thumb myself because that gives you a bite like crazy on the string. Really raw. But
there's definitely a bow technique with it. It's not like the regular
the gamba technique is is a thing all of its own. A completely different thing. And there are a number of different ways of doing it. In the historical record, you see all sorts of kinds of different holds. And that's one of the fun things about it is we get to try them.
Yeah.
Try them all and see which one you like best.
Yeah.
Spend a little time with them. I had my bow hold changed by various teachers numerous times, and finally settling on one that I like.
Yeah.
And so the bass file is about cello sized.
Okay.
Tuned D to D, 6 strings with a third in the middle, tuned in fourths, and the French Baroque bass has 7 strings, a low A. That's the same A on a bass.
Those strings would hurt my head, man, with a third in the middle. Like
it takes some doing. If you're used to strings that are tuned equidistant from each other, turning that corner around that third is really a thing.
Yeah.
Coming from the bass and the cello, not necessarily in that order, which is what I did. Guitar I'd always loved very much, but that third always confounded me.
Right.
But it's just practice.
Yeah.
You just sit down, you wrap your head around it, you go, okay, people do this, I'm people, I can do this. and
I'm an adult, technically.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah.
And it's just, okay, brain, shut up and do the thing. Okay, do the thing some more.
Right.
Okay, do the thing some more.
Suck a little less.
Oh, hey, look at that. There it is.
Yeah.
I can deal with thirds. Woo!
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
The only experience that I've had with like the viola da gamba is I did a Bach piece for my senior recital, and it was a sonata or something, and they reworked it for viola. Obviously wrote it out, but that.
Oh yeah, one of the gamba sonatas. Was it D major?
Gamba sonata.
Was it D major or G major?
I can't remember. Yeah, but it was. Please. That was like a million years ago.
Yeah.
But I did play a piece, and that was my first and at school we had. I think they had one at WSU that somebody busted out and played, and
cool.
And that was cool for everybody to see, because that kind of leads to my next question, is that I think I won't mention his name, but I only know one other guy in town who plays viola da gamba, so that's really cool that you're interested in doing this, because a lot of people don't know about the older instruments and
right. Well, out at what is now the Metropolitan Conservatory was the Strings Academy. We changed our name. We were fortunate. There's the Viola da Gamba Society of America. There are actually enough players in the country to have a society. And they have a consort loan program. A consort, of course, being a set of instruments. In this case, 2 trebles, 2 basses, and a tenor. And for the lucky recipient, you apply to them, and you get it basically for free. A deposit, safety deposit. but that's refundable. But I applied on behalf of the conservatory, and we got it for 2 years.
That's
and
cool.
So we've been teaching people to play the gamba
Mm-hmm.
out there. We got some pretty good players coming up, so we might actually wind up with an actual, performing ensemble here in the KC area, which would be great. I don't know that we've ever had that. I know that we don't right now. But there's great early music in this town. Great historical performance going on. The KC Baroque Consortium, the Bach aria soloists sometimes get in on that. Bo Bledsoe's Ensemble Iberica, they dip into that from time to time. Even calling me to do it, if they're really desperate. And so but you can have an even better scene if you've got a good amateur scene going on.
Yeah.
People actually getting some dirt under their nails and playing it, and then they like to come to your shows then.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's kind of our end game there, is to actually get a good amateur scene.
Like when I think about a lot of classical stuff, I know that in general a lot of choirs tend to do stuff like that before 1600. You'll see a lot of Renaissance kind of stuff in choirs, and then definitely people will start with that Gregorian chant kind of stuff once in a while. They'll get a group of men and they'll say, but definitely in orchestra, I can say with pretty certainty that we don't really do anything before 1600. That kind of box.
For you to do.
Yeah, and there wasn't much to do, but there were those instruments there. So my question is like, how the heck did you get so fascinated by what led you to be fascinated with all that like kind of pre 1600 stuff?
An injury, actually. I'd always kind of liked Baroque music. I mean, I was raised on classical music, classical and big band. I discovered, I heard popular music, rock and roll. I heard it, growing up in the 70s in the Bay Area. You weren't going to escape it.
Yeah.
But my parents are World War II generation, and so it wasn't really encouraged. I loved it. But
pissing off the parents.
Once I hit high school, there was no going back. I really got into it. But up until then, as a kid, I had a subscription to the San Jose Symphony, and I would go every month and all this sort of thing. And I always gravitated toward Bach, Handel, Vivaldi, and the big three that you usually hear from that period. And while I liked the 19th century stuff somewhat, it was always a bit thick and syrupy for me.
It is.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I have since developed a taste for it, certainly, but and sometimes the thicker and syrupier the better. But at that time, it was a little sweet. And so I'd always kind of been that way. But when I got into college, I entered as a jazz bass major and did not have my own instrument. I was borrowing one from the school, and it wasn't set up, and nobody really told me that. And I wound up with tendonitis, because I didn't have the infrastructure to play bass to begin with. I was a little 120-pound cellist, for Pete's sake, And so I actually wound up with my hands in braces for a year.
Oh, wow.
And I was living with my girlfriend, and she had recorders. Because she used to go to the Oregon Shakespeare Festival all the time and stuff like that. And had a bunch of Renaissance stuff and some of David Monroe's recordings and some of those funky 70s jobs, that when they were really having a good time and just really starting to get into the research. So there's a lot of anachronistic stuff, but a lot of really great performance anyway. That's just about as much fun as you can possibly have. Sometimes I think that we got a little bit too, as any scholarly pursuit does, sometimes you get a little too serious about it, and you lose the kind of initial magic that you found in it to begin with. And so as I was convalescing, I found that I could hold a recorder while wearing braces on my hands, and still play it, and it didn't hurt. I didn't have to squeeze very hard,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I could get sound out of it. So I did that to keep myself from going absolutely stark raving.
Sure. Yeah.
And one thing led to another, and I wound up with a viola da gamba in my lap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I heard a performer play it at the Shakespeare Festival,
Yeah.
and I was just absolutely captivated by it. And what a sound! It's a lot thinner and a lot quieter than a cello. A cello is very rich,
Right. Yeah.
really,
Thick. Yeah.
yeah, rich, thick, and chocolatey.
Which I love. I
Oh
love
yeah,
that song.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But this was, well, it's the sound of a bowed guitar.
Yeah.
The strings are light, and you pluck them with the bow, and you let them ring. You can also sustain as much as you like, but the idea is to get that little boing, and then let them let the body do the work, and let them ring like that. And it was wow. And so I started poking around a little bit and wound up getting one. Kind of literally fell into my lap. This brand new one that guy out on the Oregon coast had left on consignment because he was not long to this world, and they couldn't find him or the people that any money was supposed to go to, and so they said, is that a shop? And I said, we don't know how.
What do we? Yeah, we don't know anything about.
Make an offer,
thing,
So I lowballed them pretty hard, and they took it.
Yeah. That's
well,
cool.
Wow, thanks you guys.
That was meant for you, man.
Yeah, within a couple of years, there was one professional gamba player in Portland at the time, Tim Scott. He was, I think he went on to be chair of the Oregon Symphony for a time. He recently retired. Great guy, Tim.
But he had someone else around there to talk to
really
about
great
it,
player.
whatever,
and when I called him to do looking for gamba lessons, he about fell off his chair. He was so happy to have somebody to play with. And I studied with him, and what was so great about my undergrad is tiny little college. And so if I found something off campus that I wanted to do, I could club it over the head and drag it back, and they'd let me keep it. And get a grade for it. And so they let me keep him.
Yeah.
and I could take gamba for credit, and so I did. Within a couple of years, I was making more money playing that than I had playing bass or cello or anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing.
Right.
Woohoo! Yay for tendonitis! I'm back, and playing a thing that's not killing my hands.
See, that's awesome, man. I mean that.
And
so you said something really interesting a minute ago. How, and I'm fascinated by this too, because my mom is about the best person in the entire world at this idea of, we have something really bad that happened, and then because of it, X, Y, and Z happens later, and then that's a great example, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you have this really terrible tendonitis. You never
know, you may be,
now you have a lifelong love of this new thing.
And it's taken me to some really interesting places. Yeah, no, at the time, dealing with that injury, I was in despair.
Sure.
I was just a sophomore, and I finally found what I wanted to do. Not just what I wanted to do, but really kind of what I had to do, which is, there's nothing else I can stand. That's why I'm in music. I did other stuff. I tried other stuff. Hate it all.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you hate everything. What are you going to do for a living? You know?
Right.
Well, at least there's a chance with this. So, yeah. So
and then I wasn't going to talk about this, but this is a really interesting topic about how in music we kind of, and it's not, this isn't what we do. This ends up for some people being like their identity.
It's what we are.
Yeah, it's what we are. And I think my analogy I always think of is like a football coach that's been coaching for like 47 years, and then this is what they do. It's their identity. And so like that's what happens, right? When you have this like injury, and it's not just, well, I got to go find something else to do. It's a whole different emotional situation, right?
Yeah, it's because in order to do this well, you have to do it that way. You can't have a day job and be fully professional as a musician. I mean, you can.
Yeah.
You can, but that day job can only be you can't think about it. You have to think about it much.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of job, you can't have the kind of job that you have to take home with you.
Yeah.
A lot of us have to have day jobs. I didn't mean that you can't have a day job and be a professional musician. Obviously, we have to do that. But you
like
can't,
working at
can't
Cerner or
have-
something where it's like your whole life, and then you have this barely extra music thing, right?
cannot
It's
do it.
hard
That's,
to do that.
That's what I
yeah.
mean by day job. I'm
Yeah.
talking about a career day job.
Yeah.
You cannot
Not a
this
part
can't-
time or something. Yeah,
this
yeah.
cannot be your secondary career if you're actually going to make a career out of it. This has got to be your whole focus, your entire being.
Yeah,
Because it is that detailed, it is that rich, and it takes that much work.
yeah.
And we're going through a period of time right now where it feels like the vast majority of people out there don't seem to understand that. And I don't know what we're going to do about that, but because it makes it kind of difficult to get paid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my opinion is a lot of people are, I think there's a ton of people that would love to make this their full-time thing, but I think they're looking at it reactionary, and I don't know if that's good or not, but they're going like, okay, there is quite, like, gigging in town. There's quite a few gigs. You can definitely get some gigs here.
You can make a living.
You can make a living, but they look at it as you're probably not going to find like 17 gigs a month. That's a hard thing to do. Some people find it, but that's a hard thing to do. So they see it as, I have to react to this and go, all right, now I have to go work at a music shop or go do this or go take my UPS job in the morning and stuff, and like,
well, that's when you hear about the day jobs.
yeah.
The deal is, and if you talk to people who are making their living in the arts, and not just in music but in any art, it comes down to the fact that you have to diversify your income streams within the field. So 17 gigs a month may not be a reasonable expectation, but 10 gigs plus teaching some lessons, plus maybe doing some studio work, plus writing an article, plus
a wedding. Well, the weddings would be
wedding's
part of
a
the
gig,
gigs,
but plus whatever else you can find, plus working in that music store. I try to keep it music all the time. You try to stay in the field as much as you can. If you got to go be a greeter at Walmart or something, okay, well, do that, but keep your eye out for something in your field because you'll enjoy it more.
A lot of people do like the church directorship for music. That's a great.
I was a church choir director for 8 years.
And I'm lucky and not so lucky about getting to teach lessons. That it's great when your day job is something that can help your career.
Absolutely. I've been relying on my stable of students a lot right now because I've gone back into the woodshed. You're catching me kind of toward the end of that. At the end of that phase of being really hard back in the woodshed, just trying to get my chops, bump them up a couple more levels. So I haven't been doing the terribly diverse income stream, and I feel it when I'm not doing it. Because
the playing gigs and lessons, that's two different. You're doing it. And then you said something else too just a minute ago about when you have about being in like kind of 100%. You're talking about it's for somebody like myself, and I think you would be similar, where I don't like doing it for only fun. Like you were talking about the emotion of being deep in it. It's so hard to like be in and out and in and out and in and out, because we're so perfectionist, and for me, I guess I can speak for myself that when I take a long break from like practicing, you can feel it. It takes at least a week to really start feeling good again, and the emotion of that is too emotional to be in and out, in and out, in and out.
When you come back and you're not as good as you were when you left, and you feel like you're constantly playing catch up. That'll drive you nuts. But I got kids that ask me about following a career in music and so forth, and you hear a lot of panicky stuff from your parents, and no, you're gonna be a musician. Well, look, the thing is that in any field, you've got the most public figures are those at the top, right? And in any field, the number of people at the top is a tiny percentage of the people who are actually involved in doing it. Only one person gets to be the CEO of a corporation, for Pete's sake. Right?
Yeah.
That's like your basketball star, your football star, your successful musician. Okay?
The symphony player, maybe.
The symphony player, that's kind of more of a that's working stiff.
Yeah,
that's what that's doing.
True.
You know, that's not the conductor is a star.
Yeah. That's
you know,
a better example.
Whether you like it or not, and to a certain extent, possibly the concertmaster.
Yeah.
But aside from that, all the rest of that lot, you're just the band.
You're just a scrub.
Yeah, but it's a steady gig. That's nice.
Yeah, it's a good gig. Yeah.
But so it's the same for anything, and you can totally make a living doing this. Mm-hmm. You got to train just like any other profession, right?
And the other one we forgot was like public school, right? I mean, doing orchestra conductor, whatever. That's another huge area of our music community.
Yeah. There are so many opportunities still.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
especially in Kansas City. I love that Kansas City is fairly rich in music. The amount of musicians here, but also the support from the community is still supportive of it.
Yeah. That's. I ain't from around these parts myself. I originally hail from the West Coast, from the San Francisco Bay Area and on up to Portland, Oregon. And then I lived for 10 years out upstate New York. I used to get out of the city, as often as I could, which actually turned out to be not infrequently. And when I came out here, I didn't have to stay. I could have left. But I opted to stay because the support is so good here.
Yeah.
And the opportunities are plenty. You don't get lost and buried like you can out in the one of the coasts.
Yeah.
The community's small. You wind up playing with the same people over and over again.
It's big, but it's small.
Surprised at how often you play with the same people. Yeah. It's like, you again.
Yeah. We were joking with the jazz guys because there's a lot of good jazz players here in town. But it is like the top, that top 50 to 100 players. It's like 40 bands for the same 75 players. You know what I mean? Everybody's subbing with each other.
Everybody's got several things going on.
These two guys are also in this two band with these two other people, and these guys have the different. It's big enough that there's a crap load of good players here, but it's small enough that you will play with a lot of the same people. Which is helpful.
Well, that's good because then you know who you're playing with, and you usually have some type of rapport, for better or worse, with that person.
You don't have to change your name every 5 minutes,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Because you've overstayed your welcome or whatever. And
right.
That's fine. So there was one of the few gigs that I've done with you was a really crazy gig, and I wanted to talk about it for a second because it was so unique. We did a gig at Uptown Arts Bar.
Yeah.
And you probably remember it. So we had it was like, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 6 or 8 singers or something.
Yeah.
And then we had this little group of us. So it was and there was like a lute guy there, right?
Yep.
So we had a lute. You played viola da gamba. I played violin. Was there horns? Like a trumpet or something?
We didn't have horns. I think we may have had some recorder players.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but anyway, there was a group of singers. Then we had our little band, and what I thought was really funny is that whole gig, to me, epitomized you. Where it was like, so what the gig was is that we played. It was like old school type songs, right? Medieval style songs.
They were body songs.
So explain it.
Yeah, basically. Great. Well, the English have always had a great sense of humor long before Monty Python, and one of the sort of tenets of English life is that nothing can get your humors back into balance better than a good laugh at a dirty joke, and so you get this whole repertoire of off-color songs, and some of them written by composers that you wouldn't otherwise expect to do such things, like Henry Purcell, whose sacred music, of course, is just absolutely gorgeous, you know. And then he's got this whole series of catches, which are these rounds with oftentimes kind of concealed texts that when all the parts come together, the concealed text shows itself, and it's pretty funny sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, like, actually funny, not the sort of, you know, obligatory laugh that you do at that same line in that Shakespeare play every single time, you know. Because, oh, isn't it funny that they actually thought of those things? Well, of course they did. Where do you think you came from?
Yeah. Right, and so these were like secular songs, basically,
Uh-huh.
and the funniest thing to me was that, like, so they were sang in like this old school Renaissance or kind of opera-y, you know, kind of mentality, but they were all like dirty, right? They're all like belching and like drinking songs, and like there was like the three ladies got up and did their like men bashing song, right? And like it was this like dirty songs but sang like opera, like it was crazy, right? I mean, just kind of silly, but I thought of it as like the songs that every like opera singer wishes they could have sung but never got a chance to, you know, like you could just imagine like a bunch of these, like it was basically Monty Python in song. I mean,
more or less,
if you can sort of imagine that. But that was a crazy gig. I've never played a gig like that.
It was really fun. I'm sorry we couldn't pay you more.
But yeah, we did that at like the Uptown Arts Bar, I think. It was, but that was a cool, and so that's kind of leads to my next question, where that was kind of a really cool gig, but this is just how anybody who doesn't know much about gigging, this is just what it is. You get this huge network of random knuckleheads, you know, and then you're like, hey, I got this project. It's weird, come in and do this, and you know, you find a bunch of these knuckleheads that all went to school, you know, and they can sight read great, and they're great singers, and then you find some dude who can play a lute, you know, and then you're like, hey, I got a lute gig for you, you know, like, talk about a little bit about like the mentality of like all these people that I was just talking about, where they've all come from academia, you know, and then the difference between like maybe dealing with those kind of people and then dealing with some maybe non-trained musicians. Do you have any thoughts on?
Sure.
On
well,
that?
It's kind of what I do. So I cross that divide a lot.
Yeah.
Because I went into academia. That was also a result of the injury. Because I was on track to become a performer, but that scared the heck out of me. Because what? I'm not going to be able to play. My body not going to be able to hold up under a rigorous performance schedule. So okay, now what do we do? And so I opted to, discovered the viola da gamba. And so I decided to focus on doing that on an academic career, and went through to my doctorate at IU in their historical performance program there, and but that really was always Plan B. I often tell people don't have a plan B, because that's what you'll wind up doing.
That's interesting.
Have a plan A and then just freaking go for it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think a lot of people wouldn't say that. They would tell yourself, make a plan E and F and G and whatever.
Yeah. Well, no, you'll wind up doing those, and then you won't do what you set out to do originally, and then you look back and think, well, why the hell didn't I do that? That's one way of looking at it anyway.
Yeah.
It's not particularly safe, but what is? Getting up in the morning isn't safe. If you stop and think about it, which you probably shouldn't do too often.
You get a goal and go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so I went the academic route, but the thing is that essentially at my core, I play music, right? And I like music for itself, not for some, not as an intellectual pursuit. I enjoy the intellectual pursuit. It's great. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about our subject material. is that there are so many facets of it. You can do it, you can think about it, you can listen to it, you can, whatever you like. And so I decided I'd think about it for a bit and talk about it more. And I did that whole thing. But like I said, at my core, I like to play. And I like to play different things. I grew up listening to different things. Even though I was a kid, as I said, I was raised on classical and big band. And there was other stuff going on. And I did hear it. I just, didn't play it in my room so my parents would hear until I was a teenager and didn't care about that anymore. And then I listened to everything. And so I like to play everything.
Yeah.
And so I found that just because, that schooled musicians are of one sort. Well, there are many sorts. Many sorts, but they tend toward one, a type. And then outside of that, there's this whole other bunch of musicians that have a wide variety of different backgrounds and different sorts of training that inform their music in such different ways that and it's fun to plumb those depths and find out how you do it. Oh, that's cool. And then maybe I assimilate that and make that part of me, and now it's part of my approach too, and so that's kind of what that's all about.
Do the non-trained people have more fun than us?
Yeah.
That's a funny thing to ask, right? I mean, is there a little truth to that?
I think it is. And of course there are probably more exceptions to the rule than there are those that actually conform to it. But
what is the comparison to the talent level though?
Well, see, that was the thing that's the thing that kind of blew my mind wide open, is after having been in the academy for so long and having practiced my art and my craft that way for so long, when this was during my doctoral degree actually, and I wanted to make a little extra money, and I still had my electric bass, and so I said, I met a guitar player who was going to the school also to study guitar, but he'd been playing electric, and I said, well, we'll make some money, let's get a band. Let's just do covers, go play frat parties and stuff, and clean up a little bit, and a little extra spending money. And so we got back together. We got together, get the band back together before it even starts. We got together and started this thing, and never went very far. But the process of learning 30-some songs by rote, right, from the record, and rehearsing the heck out of them, trying to replicate every nuance. I came to this realization: this is as difficult as anything I have ever done. There is nothing easy about this.
Yeah.
It's
different, right?
It's completely
just
different.
Yeah.
It's completely different. And it really gave me pause.
And you're comparing that to like sight reading a full, not a symphony, but sight reading a bunch of stuff, and then doing this rock band by rote kind of stuff. For me, the sight reading is easy. This rote stuff, I've done well in all my ear training classes and so forth, but wow, this is a lot of memory, right?
A lot of that, but also as I'm getting into the parts and I'm realizing that they require a level of skill that exists at the highest levels of in any art. And I think there's still, even to this day, a lingering prejudice in the academy and in the classical world against improvised or rote learned music. That somehow it's inferior to what we've been doing.
Talk about that because that's big, right? It's definitely
I need
there.
An actual soapbox to stand on for this one.
Yeah,
got one because I from my explorations in this, I get up on a pretty high horse about that.
Yeah,
because
dogging country, right? Or dogging, is people,
Yeah.
Your country gig. Okay, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like
I mean,
really.
okay, have you ever tried?
Uh-huh.
Have you ever tried to put that little pedal steel lick on your telly right in that right
Yeah.
place and make it authentic? You got, and what is authenticity? It's owning it, and it takes as long to own that little lick as it takes, you to own your Bach partita. It really does. It's the same hours. It's the same work ethic. If you're going to do it right, if you're going to be at the top of your craft and you're going to do that, or your art or your craft, however you perceive it, it's the same hours, it's the same discipline, it's the same everything.
Yeah.
And that experience of doing that cover band, like I said, that really gave me pause. I came down off my classical high horse from that.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa, okay, this is hard.
Yeah.
This is bloody hard, because even if you can play the simple bass line, even if, just going chung 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 chung, you as the bass player have the world on your shoulders going chung 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 chung. I often say, if in a band situation, if the guitar player screws up, it's called a solo. If the bass player screws, or not the bass player, the drummer screws up, it's called a fill.
Yeah.
If the bass player screws up, it's called a train wreck.
Yeah. I love that, because especially in country or blues, you don't lay on that big 4 chord when it's supposed to be there, and everybody goes, what
happened?
And we have this train,
Yeah. What just
yeah.
happened? And and you got, technically, perhaps, well, not technically, but seemingly on paper, the simplest line to play in the world. I remember when I first started studying jazz, right? And I'm looking at written out bass lines and I go, oh, they're all quarter notes. This is easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is if you're reading them.
Yeah, right, I always thought the 2 examples that I always use where we're comparing, like, because I think you probably agree with this, that even the classical people think there's classical and then everything else, and I think the jazz guys feel the same way, where there's like jazz and then kind of classical and then everything else,
Right.
And with the technique of it, I would definitely have to feel like, playing a Mahler symphony and then being able to at least sort of handle country, it's not even in the same ballpark. You have to study for 25 years to get up to a symphony level and play this. You can play barely some Merle Haggard. You're not going to be amazing at it, but you can do that in like 2 years,
Yeah.
But there's something really hard about it, because like the opera singers that try to sing country, these guys have monster voices, right? It's monster. It is not their technique that is the problem.
No.
It's that they do not know how to sing like a country singer.
Right.
They're tapering every single note. And then like the Irish guys is another great example. There's a kind of a cool Irish scene in town where they do some jams and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I went over in there, as soon as I went home and just kind of sat through some of these songs, I come back and I can just like blast through them. They're half page long.
Yeah.
They don't have any shifting. They don't have any accidentals. The technique of it isn't that hard. But when I went in there, I was like, I feel like and this is a silly thing to say, but it's almost like it's too perfect. Like I'm playing it too clean, and it doesn't sound like Irish players.
Bing,
you know what I mean?
You got to know how to screw it up just right.
And we were at Winfield, this bluegrass festival, and you'd hear everybody, and because we're out like camping and stuff, everybody's instruments are barely out of tune.
Yeah.
For some reason, it feels right. It sounds like it's more authentic. It's too clean when you're. And that's some examples of.
Well, yeah. Well, that was actually something that I started to, playing in this cover band, already played into something I'd been discovering through my explorations of Renaissance music in particular, Renaissance and medieval music, but especially Renaissance. A lot of the repertoire for the viol, that's another word for the viola da gamba, for the viol is amateur music. In England, in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, and most of the 17th century, all families that considered themselves to be of good breeding had what was called a chest of vials, which is a consort much like we have at the conservatory right now.
Good breeding. That's
good
lovely.
Breeding. Yeah, isn't that nice?
How's that going to go over today?
Well, we're talking about the 17th century. We can study the past, we won't point fingers at it. So, we can't change it. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But this is England anyway, and you'd take your vials out after dinner, and you'd put your part books out, and everybody play. You know, because you didn't have machines to play your music on. You had to make it yourself. Or unless you were, very wealthy, then you'd hire somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
And you'd play with them usually, because playing music was a hip and cool thing to do, especially at all levels of society, in all classes. Playing music was the thing to do.
They're respected.
Respected, and also there was no question that you'd do it. It's a part of the human experience. It's a part of how we communicate. It's about how we sort of reinforce our own identities. Is what music is, how we use music really.
We could do a whole nother show.
Oh
on
yeah,
that.
we can. But I've been discovering that there's this rich repertoire of music for amateurs, eminently accessible. One of the things that was so pleasant about playing the viol is that at first was that I'd spent so much time, practicing on the cello and then the double bass, which are comparatively very difficult instruments to play because no frets.
Yeah.
You spend so much time
developing
that muscle memory.
Yeah.
So that on the black void that goes from the nut to the end of the fingerboard.
Stupid intonation.
And it's brilliant once you get it, but boy, it sure is unpleasant for those around you. I was talking to somebody last night, comparing practicing an orchestral string to smoking cigars. You really have to have a profound disregard for those around you if you're gonna do it. And
is there much worse than hearing like a fourth grade squeaky violin?
Not much.
I don't know. There's much.
No, it's really not. It's an exercise in believing that one day it will get better.
Yeah. This other guy I knew was joking. He's like, I know, I got a better one for you, drunk saxophone player. And I'm like, he's like, dude, they're
Your piccolo.
And I'm like, all right, well, we can agree to disagree. He was pretty adamant, but so like again, we were talking about the difference between like playing.
So to get back to that. I'd already been discovering this rich repertoire of stuff and thinking to myself, now wait a second. The recordings of this, people are making recordings of these things now, and it's winding up in the classical bins. So this great amateur music, which really isn't difficult to play, is receiving the same reviews and same serious consideration as Mahler, as Beethoven.
Right.
And I'm going, how does that translate to now?
Yeah.
And then I go and play this stuff, and I'm going, it does. It translates completely. Anything you do is as hard as to do it right. You got to do it. It takes just as much work, and it's with what we might refer to as popular styles. Familiar. I can't say that word right now. Familiarly. There we go. Yeah. It's like the recorder. The recorder is an elementary school music instrument, or music teaching instrument, right? It's a teaching tool. The reason why we use it is because it is very easy to start, but you can spend the rest of your life perfecting you can never perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. But you spend the rest of your life working on your technique and your phrasing and your musicality.
The really
Netherlands
good at that thing.
Turns out amazing recorder players.
Yeah.
You can get your doctorate in recorder performance at the IU Conservatory. And that's what you're looking at when you're looking at non-classical, non-jazz styles. Easy to get into. 3 chords and a guitar. Go form a band, dude.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. But you spend the rest of your life getting good at it. You know,
that's like instruments in general, like maybe even the drums or electric guitar, where they're very. My opinion is I think some of these stringed bowed instruments are about the hardest we got in the world, but some of the other ones, like maybe electric bass or drums or something, seem like they're really, and they are not too horrible to start, but you can play a very long time and still not get great at it. You know, you have to play a very long time to get amazing. And I think all those country and blues and some of these other genres that we seem to be like technically, with the technique of them being very easy, you have to still play them a long time to be a complete like badass at them. You know, I mean, you have to.
That is completely true. And the other thing that I realized, you know, is playing fretted instruments. I kind of looked back at it for a long time. I thought, you know, on the cello and the bass, I was working too hard. You know, why not put bloody frets on them?
Yeah.
Jeez, this just takes. You get such
ridiculous.
You get the result is so much more immediate.
Yeah.
You know, and you get some satisfaction a lot sooner. And
but it's not the same.
It's not the same.
The bow
it's not
is
the same.
just absolutely awesome. You know?
I mean, the bow on the viol, you got the best of both worlds. You got frets and a bow.
And the bow.
You know, but I've been back on the cello a lot lately, and I've regained my appreciation for the fretlessness. On my electric bass, I've been playing fretless exclusively for decades now, because it's just so much more expressive. I feel. And I put, you know, my electric bass has lines on it. I made sure that it does, but I don't play it that often, and I figure it's better to sound good than to look cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is that. But so it's I found out that it's all just music. You know, country music, rock music, rap, classical, just music. Sam Phillips actually said that very thing in an interview. You know, Sam Phillips of Sun Records back in the day. You know, he says music, man, it's music, black music, white music, it's all music. You know, and Sam, that is exactly correct.
So I got just a couple left here. Talk a couple minutes about I have this theory with kids in particular where I have like a student and they'll want to, like, let's say they're on the violin and then they're like, hey, I'm gonna start piano, be excited for me, you know, and I'll sit there and be, you know, a little bit annoyed because as a kid, my personal opinion is that I personally think they need to stay on one because if they're learning the technique of their instrument, but especially a little elementary kid, my opinion is that they're still learning all of their like music terminology and they don't have a whole lot solidified yet. Right. So that would be my opinion to little kids about, I would stick them on one instrument for a bit. And then after a while, if they get pretty, you know, in regards to like all of their music terminology, what is a quarter note, C sharp, then I would say like, go for it. If you want to go off and do another thing, that would be my opinion. And I don't know if it's right or not, but I tend to, and I think the best example of this is when you go to the Irish jams and everybody, they bring their 5 instruments. They bring their banjo and their mandolin and then their violin and the guitar and then like, and then their tenor banjo or their, you know, soprano mandolin, all these weird instruments.
Got a couple of weirdies in there.
You know, the alto guitar and like, I'm like, all right, dude, whatever. You know, you and I joked about that the other day. Like, about finding some weird instrument, but I always think it's funny, and this is just my opinion, but I listen to some of those guys play, and it seems like to me that they have spent their, you know, I'm joking, but like 5 hours, and they're basically a 5-hour player on like 10 instruments. Yeah. And for myself, I'm even being a little hypocritical here because I play viola, violin, and sing a little bit, you know, so I'm even 3 myself.
Well, you know, violin and viola are pretty closely related.
They're pretty close.
You've got a little bit of string length difference.
Yeah, but I personally, if I'm going to hire somebody for a gig,
Uh-huh.
I don't want to hire a guitar player playing bass.
No.
I don't want to. That's my opinion. I don't
Sure.
want to do that because I want to hire them on guitar.
Right.
Because they're awesome on guitar and they're pretty good on bass.
Sure.
I want them to play guitar.
Yeah.
Because I want the. What's your opinion about people playing like a lot of instruments?
Well, I do play a lot of instruments, and
Yeah.
it kind of happened by accident.
Mm-hmm. Feel free to disagree. That's my opinion. Yeah.
I both agree and disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a trick, because the downside to playing more than one instrument is the very thing that you described, is that you're splitting your time between them. However, that depends on the instruments. If you stay within your family, oftentimes practicing one is practicing the other to a certain extent. And there are different techniques on the other, but you can get pretty efficient about it. I've found a close connection between the viol and the guitar. One's bowed and the other's plucked. The left hand is the same, except one is being held like this and one is being held like that. You'd be surprised how difficult it is to translate this to this.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
It's astounding, but it can be done.
Yeah.
And for instance, right now I'm focusing on guitar primarily because I'm interested in the viol as a modern instrument. I play an electric one.
Yeah, that's so cool that you got an electric.
And
yeah.
I the difficulty has been making it seem serious. It always has, there's a novelty quality to it, that I think is unfortunate.
You mean like other people taking it seriously?
That and even just myself listening to it and wanting to feel like I'm doing a real thing,
That's interesting.
When you get an instrument, I received this thing from the fellow who built it in the Netherlands, Jan Gurissen. It's a phenomenal thing, but I got it about 13 years ago. And my work on it is actually what earned me my tenure, which was ridiculously cool. But the question that I was faced with was, how does something that I've never heard sound? What does it sound like? What do you do with this thing? And if I'm a gamba player, like the majority of gamba players, and I sit down and start playing Meret or Bach or Fork around, well, who cares? You can already do that on the original instrument. So what do you need that for? I could sit down and play guitar licks on it, but you got a guitar for that. I could. Well, so what can I do? Well, I did come to the conclusion that it is that I want to approach it as a guitar, not just to play guitar licks, but actually to play guitar licks, to explore the chordal possibilities with the bow. To discover, to explore phrasing possibilities within the context of guitar with a bow.
Right.
And so I'm practicing my left hand like crazy, using guitar materials because they're there. And they're easier to process because they're there, and I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel in that respect. So my left hand learns, and then I take it to the violin. By gum, if it's not there. And it's like, okay, now we're on to something. But also in the folk traditions, and also you go back to the Renaissance. We can't really call it a classical music tradition. I'd call it a working musician tradition. And you were expected to be a multi-instrumentalist. It's what they did.
Yeah.
It's what they did.
That's a good point.
When you study viol at the conservatory level now, you have to play treble, tenor, bass, and violone, the double bass. You got to play them all.
Yeah.
And you got to learn to read all the clefs. And there are more than just treble and bass, way more than just treble and bass, and you got to be able to do it on the fly. Alto, soprano, mezzo soprano, baritone, a French violin clef. There's a fun one for you. Looks like the treble clef, ain't a treble clef.
Oh, goodness gracious!
And so the upside to practicing a lot of instruments, especially if they're not related, like doing a wind instrument and a string,
Right.
or is that you get a different perspective on music making.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And for instance,
and it's so different, right?
is so
Those
different.
instruments are so different that they don't really conflict, I guess.
Not really, except for time, the time spent on them.
Right.
But playing a wind instrument or singing, you learn to breathe.
Yeah.
And you learn to breathe with the phrasing. It's something that string players forget to do all the time. They forget to breathe. I have students that forget to breathe, actually forget to breathe, like turn blue.
Right.
Like, dude, breathe.
Yeah.
But you
especially improvising or something, we don't have to stop.
Right.
Ever.
Never.
And
right. We're all Kenny G.
Yeah. Mr. 50 minutes in a row or whatever he did.
Circular breathing are us. But then you go to the keyboard, and all of your harmony is laid out in front of you.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't ever discourage my kids from taking piano lessons.
Yeah.
Because if they
learning theory is too ridiculously easy.
if they do get a hankering to go into music as a career and go to music school, they're going to have to take piano anyway.
Yeah.
Because you have to pass piano proficiencies. Sure. You have to study more than one instrument at the college level. You have to.
Yeah.
And so I figure go ahead and get your start on that now. It'll be less work for you when you get there. Hell, you may be even able to waive that requirement and focus on the instrument you really want to do.
Yeah, that's true.
So there is that. However, it has to kind of be per kid, on an individual basis, because some kids can totally focus on both of those things, and then other kids are doing that plus soccer plus this plus that plus whatever, and now they're not doing anything more.
Right. Yeah.
They got 5 minutes a day for everything, and then you can't do it.
And I get you, man, because like the biggest example I can think of is you see this in the jazz culture a lot, where you got a saxophone, but flute and clarinet are so close because they have so many, and I guess my argument to them of why I think that's okay and why something else to me wouldn't is because they've already gone through this whole thing. They're not starting flute until at least like junior year of high school or something, where they've had this good 5 full whatever years to perfect their saxophone, and they know their rhythms, they know their music terminology, and now they're kind of switching over. I guess what I was talking about is like little kids, where and another example I guess maybe is for me, fourths drives me nuts. I can't do it. I can't do it. Or banjo in the thirds or whatever. All the million, like you were talking about the one string that's a third, and like that I can't do it. I've tried it and I can't do it. So like I'm fifths, and I just need to stay there. I would argue that sometimes when like little kids go back and forth between banjo and violin or guitar and violin, or for example when they start on piano and this is 0 or this right or no this is 1 this is 1 2 3 and this is 1 but so so it's like that stuff, we have 0, right? There is actually 0.
I tell my kids that we as string players are actually more evolved than pianists, because they call these fingers, we have opposable thumbs.
Oh, and
so we can do things like make and use tools. We can open doorknobs. It's amazing. I don't know how pianists do it
like
with their
inferior
fingers.
people.
They haven't even come down from the trees yet. Watch out for those pianos and trees.
But I would think that sometimes, at least with a kid, and that like I just said, I totally see your argument about you can learn so much more about music by kind of diversifying yourself.
Yeah.
I just am always bummed when, like, this would be the argument that I would say. I'm like, this person who's splitting 5 instruments and they're not, becoming a ridiculously awesome musician on 1 or 2. I would say to that person, don't complain about not getting gigs then, if you're going to split your time and not, I don't know,
Yeah. However, I have in the current gigging climate, the fewer people you can have in a band, the better.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
And that means that being a multi-instrumentalist can actually be to your advantage. When I have my own show that I do now, Genome and the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy,
versatile,
and it's just me.
Yeah.
And I'm playing everything. I got keys, I got guitars, I got viols, I'm singing.
Yeah.
I've composed all that stuff. I'm a studio producer. I've done all the mixes. Everything there is mixed to a T, so that it sounds as good as it possibly can. Kind of bringing everything I've ever done to bear. And one of these days, my cello will get involved in it. When
That's
I've got
cool,
people
man.
I can pay to carry all that stuff. That's what keeps me from including all that right now. Is
Where are your roadies?
I don't
What's
have
going
room in
on,
my
man?
car. Yeah, I know. It won't work for free. I don't know why. But for a kid, I would have to say that it is, on an individual basis, because some kids can do multiple things and should, because there's that sense of exploration. And usually, the way I'll judge it, the way I try to sort of assess it, I don't think judge is the right word. Assess it is, what's their bliss with this whole thing, this music thing?
Yeah.
Is it getting good at that instrument? Is that what they want to do? Are they just absolutely focused like a laser on that thing? Or is it just music generally that they're turned on by? And if that's what's turning their crank, then maybe they'll be interested in this for a little while, and then, ooh, what's this? Ooh, shiny, what's this?
Yeah.
And I don't want to discourage them from doing that if it keeps their head in music.
Yeah.
If it keeps them interested in the art, then by all means, try everything. Smorgasbord, man. Take a little bit of each and see if there's something that really turns your crank. And if you find that, then do that.
Yeah.
But if not, then maybe you want to compose. Maybe you want to write.
Yeah.
Because then you got to know a little about everything. Whatever you're going to write
That's
for.
what was so awesome about all these classical composers, right? Is they had a general framework of what this instrument, what this stupid clarinet can do, even though I'm a violin player, or what a piano can do.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point.
And you want to know at least enough to be able to write idiomatically for the thing, so you don't piss your players off too bad.
Yeah.
That was one. That's
do.
back to the Bach sonata that you played. When I first started playing Bach, it felt unidiomatic to the viol, and I wound up writing a whole thing about Bach and the viol because he uses it really sparingly and for very specific purposes, and it often doesn't feel as comfortable as one of the French viol players, like Marais or something. There's these guys that spent all their time on that instrument. It always feels like you're trying to play organ on the damn thing. You play Bach, and you kind of are, because that's what he was. That's what he was primarily. But he had a working knowledge of everything else. And if you've got that, well, I was thinking this morning about this very question in preparation for coming here, and I remember kind of quite possibly one of my first inklings of multi-instrumentalism when I was at a symphony performance with my parents, and my mom says, the conductor has to know how to play all those instruments.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, what?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess you'd have to. If you're going to tell them what to do, you'd better know what you're telling them to do, And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So
He's not at symphony level playing that. You got to do that for 30
well,
years.
yeah,
but he has a very high.
But he needs to be able to tell, both the violinist how he wants that bowing articulation to go. Maybe not the fingering. Those are fine points that your concert master or your section leader will help be working out with you. But he needs to be able to go from that to clearly telling that trumpet player how to articulate that bit, and if you don't have the vocabulary to be able to talk case in point, I've worked with somebody for a while now that has me writing music for them from time to time, and they are musically illiterate. And one thing that I just did, you wanted what I'd written to be darker. Well, what do you mean by darker? What is it that you want? Well, this bit, is too bright. I discovered this morning, in fact, as I was going back and doing the editing, if he just said remove the cymbals, just remove the crash cymbal. I could have had this thing to him a lot sooner.
Yeah, wow, yeah, yeah, right.
And so that, because it turns out that's what needed to be done. That was the thing that was too bright, were crash cymbals. And so, you have to have that working knowledge.
Right.
So some, but then on the other hand, how much of a virtuoso do you want to be on that instrument that you like the best? The upside is that the older you get, the longer it takes to get that good, but you can still do it. It can still be done.
Yeah, sure.
If you decide later on in life that there's a different thing you want to focus on, you can get to that level.
Yeah.
You got to have the time
right.
to do it. It's all about the time.
Yeah.
It's all about the time.
Level and et cetera. Yeah.
But you can always. Yeah.
If you want it bad enough, and you're willing to do it. Yeah.
There's still time to change the road you're on. Robert
You were talking about the terminology, and that was kind of one example of what I was thinking when back to what we were talking about the difference between trained musicians and non-classical people or whatever. Is I've had this in bands before where the guy will say, "Yeah, he'll say like something about that." Yeah, we need to like change the tone of it, and I'm like, you mean the dynamics? And he's like, oh yeah, right, and like those little terminology things of like, well, yeah, I know what you mean, like you want it to be softer, like the texture of it, but really you're talking about it just being quieter. I could tell that he just means quieter. He's not so deep into it where you and I would go like, yeah, there's quiet, but there's also this whole tone of thick quiet or bright wimpy quiet, and that's a big difference between dealing to me with those two kinds of groups, is that we all know the exact terminology of what we're doing and we're able to articulate it, and they're just going like it just needs to be
make it different.
Make it different, right?
Different.
Thanks.
Make it not great. That that is definitely the best thing about playing with trained and educated musicians, is it's way more efficient. You all speak the same language, and you can talk about it so much more easily. And going to the other side and working with the really what you might want to even refer to them as sort of the standard musician, really. That's mostly who's out there, And there's a lot of translation that you have to do, and that's actually it was a fun has been a fun challenge, and that's why I continue to work with the guy that wanted it darker, is because I have to work with people like that all the time. And so the more I can kind of hear music through a non-musician's ears, or a not formally trained musician's ears, you hear it differently. You hear different things, not better or worse. Different in a cool way, different that translates over to what you might want to refer to as learned styles as well, when you can let go of the learned and just appreciate it as music. That's the upside of the other world, right? Is the shooting from the hip and just enjoying the music for its own sake.
We lose that bad.
We lose it way bad.
And
we make it such a scientific and academic pursuit.
Right.
I did the master's in musicology, for Pete's sake, which by reading some of the recent philosophizing about it, it may not even exist anymore, because history is being found to be so subjective. Well, duh. It's just a bunch of individuals trying to figure out what went on back when from the perspective that they find. We put it all together and try to make a narrative or a story out of it. But I would get so hung up on the minutia. It actually is kind of one of the things that turned me off from pursuing early music and historical performance further.
A lot of people
is nattering over temperament and you know, and these fine little things. Okay, yes, the temperament makes a huge difference to even those that don't know it's being done. It sounds amazing, you know, but the arguments that could ensue over it, you know, to me, it's like, well, do you have one you like? Okay, do that. Just do the one you like.
Right.
You know, well, can this be tuned to that? Can we? You know, how much time we have? You know, do we have time for this argument? Okay.
Yeah, right.
You know, how would you do this ornament exactly? Well, you know, you read enough treatises and you read enough conflicting opinions from the time, from the period, and after a while you go, well, how you like to do it? Okay, do that.
Do that.
You know, let's get down to making the music and not talk so much. Okay, the talking is fun, and I know I'm gonna piss a lot of people off, you know, in that world by saying these things, but I have to admit to just a little bit of exasperation, because you can lose the groove, you know, and the musicians at the time weren't worrying about stuff like that. It was in the water.
Yeah.
They were doing what was already there. It's why you don't. It's why everything isn't bloody written out for you.
Yeah.
The further back in time you go, the less information you get on a score. Right? Most stuff from the 17th century doesn't even have dynamics marked on it.
Yep.
Yep.
That's why I was amazed with Bach, and my teacher was telling me, she's like, you see all these bowings?
Don't do those.
No.
Yeah.
They none of them were in there.
No.
The player would just decide you're gonna do, you know, and
you figure out how the words go. Even if there's no words, you figure out how the words go, because it's all song. It's all language. And once you realize that, you can dispense with a lot of that arguing.
Yeah.
Because you find the speech rhythm and you're good to go. But you know, we get so hung up on these academic questions that really make zero difference to the audience once it's actually out in the air.
Yeah.
You know, and we get away from the making of the music, from the realizing of a gesture rather than a bunch of tiny little parts. It's just a thing, you know. Just do the thing and let it come naturally. Make it a word. Don't make it a bunch of tiny little things that we have to dissect and pull apart. There is such a thing as thinking too much about something.
Yeah. I'm bad at that. Really bad.
And that's where your regular music making excels.
Yeah.
Is in the just not freaking worrying about it.
Yeah.
You know, you all speak the same language. And if you're not doing it right, you know, you'll tell them. You don't have to be too specific, because it's all, you know, it's the language we share. And so anyway,
I always thought that I always use this example of, like, if you're making the music for, like, Schindler's List, for example, and there's a moment where this is not fun, right? I mean, this is not fun like playing Nintendo is fun or something. It's just a different kind of thing. And I try to tell my students that you have to find, it's the doing it right is in the classical world. I think a lot of people would agree with me on this, is that's what's, if you have to make this word fun, or the purpose of it, you have to do this right, you know, because I mean, watching it's entertainment, you know. I mean, this movie is it's entertainment because it's a movie, but this isn't fun like Lord of the Rings is fun, you know. I mean, it's a different kind of thing when we're in academia trying to make music like this. And that's one thing I think that people that want music to always be fun, like a lot of the non-classical people, that's what they just have to understand about this song. I mean, this song isn't supposed to be fun, right? I mean, and you have to kind of find a way to need it to be the expression that it's supposed to be, right? I mean, we're describing really dark stuff here. I mean, this is a dark time.
Sure.
But I think you're right that there's something both worlds can learn from each other. Yeah. I think, you know, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like
that kind of a thing, that kind of a vibe, though, it is fun. You just can't use that word for it.
Yes, and fun is the wrong word,
because you're getting inside that that state of being.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and you're exploring it and you're bringing it out. The stuff that I write is pretty dark.
Mm-hmm.
I don't write happy songs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people do, yeah, people do the same thing that I think to me as a musician that you know, I'm going to step in it now. That a lot of women will complain about when people, you know, some idiot guy says, "Smile, honey."
You're right.
You know, I get the same kind of thing. You know, write a happy song. No.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not bloody happy. So no.
Yeah.
You know, don't tell me to write a happy song. Go screw yourself.
Yeah.
You know? and if you don't like my not happy song, then don't listen to it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I'm not putting a gun to your head to make you do that.
Yeah. You got to kind of find.
But it's fun.
Find the way to make that.
My dark songs are damn fun, if I do say so myself. You know, they're satisfying. And that satisfaction is what's fun. The satisfaction in expressing the emotion.
That's a better way to put it.
In plumbing the depths of that state of being.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's fun. Mm-hmm. And it should always be fun. What we do, and man, it's got to be fun. Because it doesn't pay enough and it's way too much work to not be fun. If you're not having the time of your life, go look for another job.
Yeah, for real.
You know, and you won't have the time of your life all the time. It's kind of a love-hate relationship a lot of times. Especially if you are under the impression it's all you can do, like I am. Then sometimes you kind of go, really would like it if I liked something more lucrative. You know, more easily lucrative. But you know,
or at least for my case, was actually good at something more lucrative, even if I didn't like it. You know.
Yeah.
So last question here. So we've already given a lot of little. Both of us are kind of teachers, and we're really interested in sharing with younger people what at least we've learned. I'm still fairly young, but so like the 20-ish-year-olds, like the college age people that are just getting into this sort of gigging professional-ish world. We've already talked about things that they should be doing, or kids or whatever, but what advice would you have to those people
that are looking for a career?
Maybe looking for a career, or even just kind of the weekend warrior kind of guy that wants to start getting in bands. They practiced a little bit, but they've, do you have any advice for them?
Keep practicing. I mean, that's really the most important thing you can do, is to is to be consistent in your practice. Always. It's such an easy thing to not do. And unless you're completely obsessed with the thing, but if you've got other things to do, as we all do, it's oftentimes the first to go. Well, I won't practice as long today. I'll make my practice really efficient. I'll only practice the bits I'm having the most trouble on. Or I don't even have time to do that today. Let me run through a couple of songs real quick just so I make sure I remember them. Okay, that's good for that day, but for Pete's sake, don't let that start happening every day, because then you don't get better. And getting better at this is one of the joys of it. We got a lot of erroneous ideas flying around our culture right now. And one of those is still this idea of, that there's an end to the works at some point. That you're going to get there. Yeah. You've arrived.
The destination.
Yeah. There's no such thing as perfect. First of all, to think that you could ever play a piece perfectly is absurd.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Because you can go up to Yo-Yo Ma and you can tell him, "Oh my God, you just played that cello concerto absolutely perfectly," and he will unfold a list of things of mistakes he made that maybe you didn't catch. Yeah. But boy, he sure did, and he's gonna be up tonight for a while thinking about those, because at this stage of his career, god damn it, that shouldn't have happened. But it did, and it does every bloody time. Doug Atwater, great drummer. I studied drums with him for a little bit.
He's the man.
He is the man.
And he says to me about Latin stuff. Yeah, he's a great drummer.
Yeah, he said to me, "Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent."
Yeah, wow, that's a great quote.
Yeah, it is. I live by that, because there ain't no such thing as perfect. But boy, you practice something the wrong way,
it's gonna be
stuck that way, and now you got to undo it. And
technique is the best example,
yes.
or like posture kind of stuff. I mean,
And another thing that I would tell people that are weekend warriors, oh, I could never do that. I could never do that. Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Stop thinking that. First of all,
right.
The thing I said earlier about people do this. You're people. You can do this.
Yeah.
Your fingers probably work just the same way mine do.
Mm-hmm.
You got the same joints that bend the same way. And didn't bend that way at one point. We have this idea of talent, and okay, now I'm getting to what I would actually want to tell people across the board. Oh, well, you can do that, but I'm not talented. Okay, let's get rid of that right now, because I was not born. I didn't shoot out of the womb, playing guitar. All right. And my mom is really happy about that, because that would have hurt. And I didn't know how to put my fingers on a string at first. There's a great picture of me in the 3rd grade with my first violin. I got my hand like this and my baseball cap up, with the brim up so I can see what I'm doing. I'm holding my bow in my fist, just like every other very first year violin student you've ever had,
Right.
I did that too. Do some people have more of a natural inclination to some stuff than others? Oh yeah. Sure. Things make sense to people that doesn't make sense to others.
Yeah.
And maybe putting your fingers on a string will make sense to you. It did to me.
Yeah.
Ultimately, after somebody said, no, that and that. Oh, okay. And, I have pictures of my hand in junior high, my cello hand in junior high, and I just saw it actually kind of appeared as we were cleaning some stuff out, and I found this picture of me in junior high orchestra, perfectly curved fingers. Like, yes, good for me, But and I remember doing that almost myself, realizing, oh no, it has to do that in order for it to work well, But not everybody's going to do that. But that doesn't mean I was talented. That just means that I had I could see how that would work. I still had to practice. It's still about the time you put into it, and how consistent your time is, and how much attention you pay to the details. That's where it is, right? That's not talent. Talent schmalent. That's if somebody's talented, that's okay. A natural inclination towards such a thing, plus all the time.
Yeah.
Plus all the time.
My aunt said something awesome to me, and she was saying that hard work always beats talent.
Every time.
You can have some talented guy, but he doesn't really try and care, and this guy's practicing like you're saying. And he said, but she said that talent plus hard work cannot be beaten. You have the talent and they do the work, they're going to destroy everyone at their instrument or whatever, basketball or whatever. But she said you hard work will beat talent. Every time, because
there's a ton of talent out there getting paid $50 for a divey bar gig.
Yeah.
Okay, a ton of it. Why aren't they getting paid more? Why aren't they getting better gigs? Practice, man.
Hard. Yeah.
They're not putting the time in.
Yeah.
They're not shedding and shredding.
Yeah.
And that's what you got to do. And
having discipline in the non-musical realm of booking the gigs and hustling, and those are the people that are actually working
those
hard.
are the people that are making the money, is the people that are actually doing the work.
Yeah.
And not going, oh, I'm talented. Nobody cares.
Who cares?
Who cares if you're talented? Nobody does. It's not, that ain't where it's at.
Yeah.
It's in the work.
Man.
It's in the work. So even if you're doing the instrument at all, you got an aptitude for it. You got an inclination toward it. Now do the work, and off you go.
Yeah, it's great, man. Yeah.
So
that's cool, man. Anything else?
If you got a question, I got an answer.
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much hit it, man. I was really glad to talk to you, because I know a lot of your perspective is different from others in regards to the history that you love, just because I know you really love to.
I like to know where things came from.
Yeah,
and
really great.
I like to hear how different people did it, And history is kind of cool because it's a foreign culture. It's a culture that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
In fact, it exists. It exists only in writing. You know, and we're anthropologists of the dead.
Yeah.
You know, in many cases, and we get to revive elements of this because you can hear how the culture sounded, sorta.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never know how it did exactly because they didn't.
We can feel that when we play the music, right?
But but you start to hear the voices. You start to hear voices. That's when you know maybe you need to stop. But no, you start to hear the voices of people who've been gone for a really long time, and these ancient cultures that are related to ours but just distant.
Yeah.
You know.
It's really neat.
And you discover more about yourself and about who you are on this planet and who you've been. You know, even if it wasn't you, if it was your great whatever, you know, that's still where you come from. You know, somewhere deep down in your genes, that stuff is still there. You know, and if you listen real hard, you can hear yourself responding to it. You know, that's the cool thing. That's the cool thing is when you hear that.
Everybody's so interested in the new right now, you know, in our culture in general, and I think that we've had this, you know, that we've had this happen politically lately where people have accidentally forgotten about some things that happened in the past, and they, you know,
and the past not being in the too distant past either.
No, and so musically, you know, or reading about history, you know, it's I totally get the argument that you can easily get stuck in the past, and that's bad too. But if you don't know about like the past, you're gonna, you know, it's bad. You know, you need to know a little bit.
Isn't the point of all of that just to try to spot the patterns that didn't work out, that led to things that didn't work out last time?
Yeah. You
know, and try to avoid doing those. But you know, you've actually got to be able to admit that you're following one of those patterns. You know, you got to be able to spot the pattern first of all, and then be able to spot it in yourself, and that's always the tough bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to say that, oh, look, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, I'm mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong side of this issue.
Yeah.
Oh, I better change my mind. Yeah, who's going to do that?
It's courage.
Not nobody right now.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do that.
It takes a lot of courage and a lot of honesty.
Yeah.
More honesty than I dare say the vast majority of us are capable of conjuring.
And that's what teachers are for, right?
That's what we're here for, and maybe that's why we've reached such a low point in how we're perceived by the general populace right now. Oh, everybody says, you know, teaching is such a noble profession, blah 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 blah. But then actually try to teach them something, see how they like that.
Yeah.
Well, now that's another story. Teachers are great till they try to teach you something. You gotta let go of that, man, because we all have a lot to learn, a whole lot to learn.
Yeah. I think that's it.
All right.
Yeah, man. Victor Penniman, thanks for coming, man.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, you can check out Victor all around town. Anything revolving the viola da gamba or old medieval music. I bet you're not going to be
call it a bowed guitar now.
Bowed guitar. Anything involving bowed guitar. I bet Victor's not going to be far.
I'll probably be somewhere in the vicinity.
You
look for G-Nome and the Soulless Minions of Orthodoxy. You can find me on iTunes. G.Nome, all lowercase, will get you to my album. And there's more coming. Got a show in the Crossroads in October.
Cool.
And more stuff coming up, and doing some partnering with my partner Jill Huxtable, who's an artist, a visual artist.
Oh yeah.
And we've been doing a combined show where she does live painting while I'm playing my.
That's neat.
My
I like
stuff.
that.
It is cool. It's quite cool, and so there'll be a lot more of that.
Yeah. Good.
And
Cool, man. All right, guys. We're gonna do some more of these little sessions here in the next coming days and months and weeks. So keep checking it out. This is Music Talk. See ya.